We are here with Angus today, new Patreon video. You just joined the Patreon and now you're here doing a video with us, and you know Yu-Gi-Oh, so we're going to do Magic today. I'm going to give you 5 Magic the Gathering cards, and you have a little bit of experience with Magic, so tell me how much Magic experience you know.
Yeah, I have about 20 games maybe under my belt. Start of lockdown, like everyone else, I was looking for something to do. There wasn't a Yu-Gi-Oh client at the time, so I downloaded Magic Arena. Played through the mandatory tutorials, played about 5 games maybe on ladder, and then uninstalled it again because the game wasn't quite for me. It wasn't what I was looking for at the time. I don't know quite what the reason was, but yeah, I have a very rudimentary understanding of Magic.
Okay, so you're Yu-Gi-Oh player, so you're too good for Magic.
Yeah.
You know, you know too much. Your brain is too large.
I don't want to start that war, but yes, you are absolutely correct.
There's too many decisions in Yu-Gi-Oh. There's less decisions in Magic. The more decisions, the more skilled you are. Anyway, I'm going to give you 5 Magic cards today, and then there's going to be 1 white, blue, black, red, and green card, 1 for all the colors, and then you're going to tell me whether they are good or bad. And these cards are going to be either pretty good or pretty bad, so I don't get any flaming in the comments down below. Well, let's go ahead and get started with the white card, and here it is.
So this is a 1 mana, 1 white instant. Instant is quick play, right?
Yep.
Yeah. On either player's turn, I don't have to
quick
do
play
anything, right? I can just play
from your hand on either player's turn. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You gotta forgive me because I played a lot of card games since I played Magic. Magic doesn't require like color requirements. It just you need the mana. You don't need like a creature of that color or anything to play an instant. Like, you know, Digimon requires you to have a yellow thing before you can play a yellow spell. Like Magic, You can just play white if you've got white mana.
If you have white mana untapped or white mana in your mana pool in any way, you can play this card.
Exile target creature, and that's banish. Yeah.
That is banish.
For a Yu-Gi-Oh player, that's banish. Okay. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card. Okay, I might need a refresh on what a basic land card is as opposed to just a land card.
A land card can be any land, and that sounds self-explanatory, but I'm going to explain it to you. There are different like cards like utility lands or dual lands or lands that tap for multiple colors. Those will not be basic lands. A basic land is literally a plains, an island, a swamp, a mountain, or a forest. Basic forest. They only tap for that one color and nothing else. It's called a basic land.
Right. Okay. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And I'm assuming I can activate this. Like, I seem to recall Magic doesn't have any like blockers of you need to. Let me rephrase this in a way. Let's say I want to exile my opponent's creature, and they've already made their land drop for this turn. I can still activate this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It will basically like ramp them, and I don't know if you know what the word ramp means, but it gets them ahead on mana, basically.
Yeah, I do have a bit of a history in Hearthstone as well, so I understand some of the concepts of ramp and things.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it ramps them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just asking because obviously in Yu-Gi-Oh, this would probably be worded in a way where if you can't fulfill the whole effect, you can't perform it.
Yep.
But I think Magic doesn't usually have those checks.
It does not.
Okay. Well, I mean, this seems insane. You're almost always going to be trading up with this, I think, because 1 mana is effectively nothing. In Magic, you can't store mana, right? It goes at the end of the turn. Like if I tap a land and don't spend the mana, it just disappears at the end of the turn. Right?
If you tap a mana and don't use them, and if you tap a land, don't use the mana that it generated. It goes out of your mana pool at the end of every phase.
Oh, every phase. Okay. Well, I think that still kind of answers where I was going with this. If I can't store a bunch of mana, like if I don't want to play something on turn 1, I can't just store this for the next turn.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This card seems nuts. You're always, as I say, you're always going to be trading up. In Magic, I seem to recall you don't get to choose what you attack. You always have to attack face, and your opponent chooses what they want to defend with.
Right.
So trading with good effects is hard in Magic. If your opponent just chooses to never attack with something, you basically can't kill it unless you have removal. And for 1 mana, I can't really imagine much better removal than this. I'm going to ask you a question. You might not want to tell me the answer, or it might be too much. How prevalent is like a can't be targeted effect in Magic?
Not too prevalent, but there are things that say can't be targeted unless you pay an extra mana, or can't be targeted unless you sacrifice a creature, or can't be targeted unless you do something else.
Okay.
There are a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
It exists, but it's not like it's on every card.
Like
in Yu-Gi-Oh, we went through like a whole phase of every card says can't be targeted or unaffected by card effects. Magic's not in that state.
There's not very many cards that say unaffected by card effects. That would be like protection, basically. There's not a lot of cards that say that. The can't be targeted wording in Magic is called hexproof, and there's not a lot of that, except for the best deck in Modern right now has a lot of hexproof effect. With the card Scion of Draco, that card gives all of your creatures hexproof, so you would not be able to even activate Path of Exile on their creatures. But for the most part, hexproof is not prevalent at all. It's more of it's more the concept of ward, and the ward mechanic is can't be targeted unless they do something else.
Okay. Okay, I don't really know. I've seen a lot of debate about there's a new commander card, I don't remember what it's called, that's got like Ward 3 on it or something. It's like a tiger.
Oh, Voja, the little big cat.
Yeah, that's popped up on my Twitter quite a lot. So I'm going to assume that that's like quite an expensive ward, but that's like I can base my understanding of ward off like how that card is like.
Oh, so yeah, so that's ward.
You know multiple mana. Yeah, it's like you spend multiple mana if you want to interact with this card. Okay. I don't think that makes this card worse. Because, as I say, it's 1 mana. Like, if something has Ward 3, then I'm still paying 4 mana for a removal spell. And if it doesn't, then that's better than just having a 4 mana removal spell. How valuable is Ramp in Magic?
Is that rhetorical?
Yeah, I'm trying to talk to myself and figure out. In Hearthstone, gaining 1 mana forever is not always game winning, but it certainly put you very far ahead. Ooh, how many decks want to play a basic land, I guess, is the next question. I'm inclined to believe, based on a couple of your videos I've seen in the past and say like the card market videos, the basic lands are not desirable. Even in this, you mentioned you can have a land that taps for 2 mana, or like 2 colors, should I say, dual lands or whatever it was called. So if that exists, why would I ever play a basic land?
Well,
if I can just play a better land.
There are cards that interact with non-basic lands. There's a card called Blood Moon that is very popular, and Magus of the Moon. It's a 3 mana card that says non-basic lands are mountains. Straight up, period. So it will turn off all your basic lands and make them all mountains. So if you're playing like a blue-white deck and you don't have any basic lands in play, you just can't play any of your spells and you lose. So every deck, like in Modern and maybe even Legacy, with a card like Price of Progress that like burns you for how many non-basic lands you have, you're incentivized to play basics because of all these hate cards. So contrary to like what you would like really think, and basic lands are worse, right? But you want to play some number of them in your decks in older formats because of hate cards.
Right. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. The next question is, as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, if I play this, do I even give my opponent another turn half the time? Like, am I just removing something that could block for game? Maybe. Maybe there's creatures that want to be exiled that I'm playing that I can put into my exile, get ramp myself, and also get a benefit from it for exiling it. Like, for 1 mana, you'd probably do that. Depends how good card draw is, I guess. I don't know if you want a -2 hand for that. I just don't see a world where this card isn't good. I think it's too cheap for targeted removal to be bad. And also the fact it's an instant you can just play on your opponent's turn. In Magic, a lot of creatures I seem to recall tend to be like, to use Hearthstone terms, like battle cries and maybe death rattles, rather than like, and then there's some like lingering effects where they're just like on the field to do a thing, right? They're not play them and then activate. Usually.
Right. There are some number of like lingering effects, like a card like Elishnorn, Mother of Machines, that just doubles your into the battlefield triggers and turns off your opponent's into the battlefield triggers. That would be kind of like a lingering effect. Even a card like Magus of the Moon that I already talked about is a creature with a lingering effect saying all non-basic lands are mountains. There's a lot of there are a lot of Enters the Battlefield triggers of cards like Archon of Cruelty that says your opponent sacrifices a creature and loses 3 life and discards a card, and then you draw a card, gain 3 life, and you have a 6/6 big Archon, huge black creature in play. That would be a good example of an Enters the Battlefield trigger. And Path of Exile would be okay against that, because you don't want that creature to attack you, because it also triggers on attack as well. But it already did the thing, is what you're trying to get at, I think.
The way I'm looking at it, exactly as you said. Did the creature already get its value before I can play this card? No, I think Magic games are mostly still won by swinging at face at the end of the day, like in some capacity. That's what I seem to remember, at least, and that's what I assume is still the case. I think hit face with 20 damage, is it? You start with 20 health, is like 20. The ultimate win con for most decks, maybe. So 1 mana to remove a creature is this might save you and buy you an extra turn, in which case the ramp is irrelevant, because you would have died otherwise, and not dying is better than dying. You can remove something that could block you for game. I can't see a world where like the give your opponent a basic land is not worth the upside of just playing this.
Okay.
I think
that's
my final.
I'm ready to give you the answer if you're ready.
Yeah.
This card is pretty good. It's not game breaking. It's kind of fell out of favor in Modern, which is of course a format of Magic. Because there is a card called Leyline Binding, which is usually only 1 white mana, and it exiles something without giving your opponent an extra land.
Okay.
But decks have this card still sees play in sideboards, but it's a little bit more niche card. But I can't say this card's bad. This card's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and go over to the next card. You did a good job analyzing that, because I figured it would be a good card to give you, because ramping your opponent is definitely a pretty big downside to this. All right, moving on to the blue card.
You're going to have to explain to me what's going on with this one.
Okay, this is a saga. It's called a saga.
Yeah.
And you read the top left text there. As this saga enters, and after your draw step, add a lore counter, sacrifice after the 3rd chapter. So as it enters, you get the first thing. On the next turn after your draw step, you get the second thing, and then the third thing respectively, and then this card dies.
Okay.
And it stays as an enchantment, so kind of as a continuous spell while the turns are going.
Okay. Kiora bests the Sea God. 5 colorless, 2 blue. Quite expensive. Create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token with hexproof. This is what you were just talking about. So yep. I couldn't path to exile this token.
Nope.
Okay. So I'm gonna have to evaluate this based on Hearthstone more than anything else. Is 7 mana for an 8/8 good? I can't believe it. Like it's not a vanilla, but it effectively is. The effect is your opponent can't do things to it. It doesn't do something on its own.
Besides be a huge 8/8.
Yeah, besides be a huge 8/8. But correct me if I'm wrong, in Magic, I can block an 8/8 with a 1/1.
Yes, you can.
And like, there's no downside to me except my 1/1 dies.
Unless you give the 8/8 trample, it could be like
an. Okay. Let me read. Let me keep reading then. Tap all non-land permanents out. What is a non-land permanent?
Anything on the battlefield that's not a land. So continuous spells like artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, battles, and creatures. Anything that's not a land that stays on the field is a permanent.
Okay.
Lands are also permanents, but this is saying non-land permanent, so it won't actually tap their lands.
Okay. Tap all non-land permanents. Target opponent controls. Oh, Magic has multiplayer formats, right? So yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, that's why target opponent. Okay. They don't untap during the controller's next untap step. Right, okay, so anything that... Okay, so yeah, okay, I get it. So like creatures won't be able to attack. I think...
Or block.
Or block, yeah. You get that in your draw step. Untap comes before draw step, right?
Yes.
I don't know if that
it's
makes
untap,
much
upkeep,
of a difference
draw.
Okay. I don't know if that makes much of a difference to how good this card is, but I'm just trying to get timeline in my head going. And then on the third turn, gain control of target opponent and opponent controls and untap it. Okay, well that does make a difference then, because if you took a tapped permanent, you can't. It would stay. The untap step would be before, so it wouldn't naturally untap. Okay. Enchantment Saga. Okay, so I play this on presumably turn 7. I immediately get an 8/8 with hexproof, but I've got to imagine by turn 7 the control of the board has already been more or less established. So I don't. This is either pushing damage that you were probably already winning the board on. Okay, explain to me a little bit about combat in Magic. Like, if I swing like a 5/5 and it gets blocked by a 3/3, my 5/5 takes 3 damage. Does that damage stay?
No. In Hearthstone it would, but in Magic it resets at the end.
Right. Okay.
At the start of the next turn.
So having a really big creature is valuable because you can block every turn with it effectively until it dies. Right. It is like an infinite blocker if you choose not to attack.
Right.
Or they don't remove it.
Unless a creature has like flying that can fly over this.
Right. Okay. All non-land permanents. This second one basically says to me your opponent skips a turn. They can play normal things, but anything they've currently established is no good. And I guess it does let your 8/8 swing. This does
unless they play a new blocker. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, things can't attack the turn you play them, but they can block on your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Target permanent opponent controls. I've got to imagine in the state of Magic, if you're playing something that stays on the board, you kind of want it there. It's not like you're just throwing things out because they look good.
Yeah.
So you're going to be taking something that either cripples your opponent's game plan or is just a game-winning card for whoever controls it. So that's. Oh, you said target permanent, so you could take a land with this, right?
You can, yes.
But equally, as we've just seen, like the ramp maybe is good, but I don't know if it's game-winning on its own. Maybe
there are some decks where the ramp is game-winning on its own. Don't get me wrong, because there are decks that like to ramp and cast huge things.
Sure, but if the ramp is game winning on its own, could I really have played this on turn 7 and then waited 3 more turns to take it? Like, I don't. I think if you're playing against a ramp deck or something, then I don't.
Like, if you're ramping, you will play this on turn like 5 or 6. You're ramping.
Well, yeah, okay. This is a hard one. I just is it too slow? Is really all the question comes down to, and how good is blue? I know blue tends to be the counter spell. You don't get to play cards deck of the format, right?
Yes.
Blue is the one where if you play it, you're hated by the table, I believe.
You're hated by the table. Yes.
Yeah. You just like saying no to everyone.
Unless you're also playing blue, then you both give yourselves a nod of approval and then both stop each other, and you're both sad.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's a blue player, everyone's sad except the blue player, and if there's 2, everyone's sad. Right. Okay. If it's a control deck that likes just stopping your opponent, it is possible you could get
blue
to a later turn.
Blue isn't always the counter spell stop your opponent always deck. Blue also has, how can I say this? Blue also, the removal in blue is more return a creature to their hand, return all creatures to their hands, taking control of stuff. That's how blue removes your stuff that is not a counter spell.
Right. Okay. So if I compare it like closer to like Priest in Hearthstone, it's not destroying stuff; it's shuffle it into the deck. It's
blue has a lot
from
of
the field in ways that
put it on top of the deck, put it in the top third of the deck, put it in the top 3 cards of the deck. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. If you've got access to a lot of removal, I suppose you could reasonably make it to a higher turn count. I really just don't know how valuable, well, I guess any of these parts are, but like especially like the second one seems nuts. An 8/8 blue Kraken isn't bad, I suppose. Like there's never a world where having that is worse than not having it. I don't think.
Right, because
And you said you could buff it.
even if your opponent can block the 8/8, they have to block it every turn, or else they're like gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said hexproof. Neither player can target it, or just my opponent?
Just your opponent.
Okay, so you can still play like buffs onto it. And the hexproof in Magic is it just can't be targeted, right?
Cannot be targeted by your opponent.
Okay, because in Hearthstone there is a couple of cards with like hexproof, but you can target them with minion effects. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Cannot target a hexproof creature with creature
okay,
effect.
you can't. Okay, you can't target it with anything, or your opponent can't. I do like stealing.
You're like, that is something I like.
It's in my English heritage, you know.
Oh my
Taking things that
God.
aren't mine is
That's so funny.
it's appealing. It is appealing.
I
was
stealing.
a priest player for like 8 years. I will be mind controlling this. And is there any way for me to speed up getting lore counters?
Yes. There's a concept in Magic called proliferating, and proliferating is increasing the number of counters on as many things on the field that can increase by 1. So you can increase the lore from 1 to 2 if you wanted to. And also, there's like other cards that say when something enters, it gets an additional counter of that type or whatever. And this would enter on 1 and 2 basically, so you get like both at the same time. There's like weird stuff like that in Magic.
Right, okay. That does make this card a lot better, I think. I don't know. Just everything in my heart is still telling me that this card is too slow. I think the payoff of an 8/8 isn't good enough for me to spend that much mana on. I think the 2 and 3 is, but my opponent can remove. Like I play this, I get the 8/8, and then they can remove this, right? Like there is removal spells that will just take this off the board.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But then I'm backing up maybe with some negates of some sort. But I probably don't have mana open if I've played this on curve. I don't know. I'm inclined to believe that this card is too slow, but I am very prepared to be wrong.
You are correct. This card's too slow.
Yeah. Okay.
So good job on that one. This was played in a competitive deck.
Is just...
This card was played as a 1-of in a competitive deck called Sultai Ultimatum in Standard, and that's the only deck that could play this card. It played a card called Emergent Ultimatum, which I just said, but it basically searches for 3 different cards with that are not multicolored, and from your deck, you show them to your opponent, and your opponent gets to choose one of them to put back into your deck, and then you get to cast the 2 of them for free. So you would cast this card, and you would cast a card called Vorinclex, which would double the number of counters on the thing. So you would get the first and second chapter of this right away. So you'd have a 6/6. Vorinclex itself had a 6/6 haste creature. So you get the 6/6 and the 8/8. You attack them for 6, and you also get to tap their stuff on the same turn. The next turn you get to steal one of their things and then attack them for game. So that's how the deck would win sometimes back in Standard. But this card in general hasn't seen play anywhere else. It's a bomb in draft. Like if you draft this card, you basically always win. Back in the draft format of this set, if you drafted the card, you basically can never lose. But in I would say competitive 60 card formats, this card is too slow.
Right. Okay. So basically, the only time it was playable is when you could cheat it out.
Yes, and you can. I mean, you can. Don't be wrong. You can still cheat this out, even nowadays in a format like Pioneer or Modern. But if you could cheat out a card like this, you might as well cheat a card that says take an extra turn. Like there's so much better cards to cheat out than this.
Oh, Magic has those, doesn't it? Oh.
Yes. There's a card called Allrun's Epiphany, which the Sultai Ultimatum deck would also play. So it would take if you didn't give them this card, they could be like, oh, I don't want you to do the QR Best of Sea God thing. You have to make them take an extra turn, because the 3 cards they're going to show you is Vorinclex, this, and a card that says take an extra turn. So what are you going to do? You have to give them. You have to put the card back in their deck that says take an extra turn and try to deal with the QR Best of Sea God and Vorinclex. So you're kind of in a catch-22. So the moral of the story is every time you resolve Emergent Ultimatum, you win the game, basically. So that's what that deck tried to do. And it did play a lot of ramp cards. It played Cultivate, which give you an extra basic land from your deck and added a basic land to your hand. And it played a whole bunch of ramp cards to just try to cast a 7-drop as fast as possible. And a lot of the time they could do it on turn 5 or 6 of the game. And then you would just lose the game to Emergent Ultimatum. But otherwise, you were correct. This card is too slow if you're not doing that. And let's go ahead and move on to the next card. Next one is going to be your black card.
Death's Shadow, 1 black mana. Okay, we like cheap cheap spells. Well, why would I pay a lot of anything for anything when I can get it for cheap?
Exactly.
Especially in a game that actually has a mana system.
Mm-hmm.
Creature avatar. Does the avatar mean anything?
No.
Like, does it give it a special effect?
No.
Or no? Okay. Death Shadow gets -X, where X is your life total, and it's a 13/13. Okay, so if I play this at 20 health, it just dies.
Yep, immediately dead.
Okay, this is like Molten Giant, kind of.
Yes.
Magic has burn spells, right? I seem to recall Red has burn spells.
Red does have burn spells. The most popular one would be Lightning Bolt, instant speed, deal 3 damage to any target.
Yeah, okay. That was always the downfall of Handlock, is sometimes you play against Mage and they just fireball your face and you lose on turn 4.
That can happen, yeah.
Yeah, okay. You could also get really low, I suppose, and your opponent could play something with flying and they just hit you in the face. Having something big doesn't really help that. 1 mana, though, you can play a lot of things with 1 mana. Like, as in, you play 1 mana for this and you have a lot open. Potentially by the time you got yourself that low. This effect, where it gets -X, is that on play or is that like permanent? Like, if I heal, does it lose stats?
Like, say you're at 14, say you're at like 10 life, and this card is a 3/3. If you heal, does
and then
it
I go to 14.
It will
it die?
It will die.
Okay, so I have to stay at low life as well.
Yeah.
For this to be like valuable. The thing is, I don't actually have to be at that low life, because in that example, for example, like, if I play this as a 1 mana 3/3, then that's just pretty good. I've got to imagine, like, it doesn't do anything else, but that's just pretty good stats for the mana cost. And it only gets better if my opponent, like, if I then decide to, like, not block, it only gets more threatening for my opponent. This, like, discourages attacking, really, because if they hit me and don't kill me, then the swing back is massive. But it doesn't do anything else. Can I metagame this? Can I see when this was printed or something?
Everyone tries to do that, but I did not. Nope. I make sure that these can't get metagamed.
Okay. I mean, the art's cool. They're not gonna spend a lot of money on artwork for a card that's bad, right?
Oh, you are so wrong. There's so many bad cards. There's a whole Twitter thread that someone does all the time with really cool arts that are terrible cards.
Right. Now, to be honest, I will come clean on this. I have seen at the time of recording the April 1st Secret Lair drops on my Twitter.
Yep.
Where they've done the exact opposite thing of they've got gorgeous art and then ruined it with a terrible meme.
Yep. I saw those. So, I might show one on screen now that we're talking about it, but that was super funny.
Black is like the graveyard deck, right? In Magic,
it can be. Black can do a lot of everything.
Okay, I mean, it would make sense. The symbol is literally a skull. Maybe playing a creature that instantly dies is valuable.
Black is basically the color that can do anything at a price. It can be the control deck. It can be a combo deck. It can be an aggro deck. It can be have a lot of removal spells. It can look at your opponent's hand and take a card out of it. Like, black does a lot of stuff, but at a pretty big price usually.
Okay, I think there's so little text on this card. There's not really much I can evaluate it on. I've just got to go on the fact that Molten Giant was good, so I think this card is playable or was playable at some point for some reason. But I don't know if that reason was it's big when I'm low health and I'm gonna sort of tap myself down, or if it's just like maybe I want things to die and this is 1 mana killer creature.
Okay, there's a little bit of context that I think I need to tell you.
Okay.
You know the dual lands I was talking about when we were talking about Path to Exile?
Yeah.
There's some lands that are dual lands, but you can play them untapped by hurting yourself.
Right, okay. So you effectively are playing Warlock. You gain a mana. Well, you can tap yourself every turn if you're playing those.
There are ways to incidentally hurt yourself.
I assume there was some way of controlling your own life total, to some extent. How low do I have to be before this is worth it?
Oh my gosh, you're saying the meme. How low
10?
can you go?
Honestly, 10 life probably makes this card worth it for the mana cost. I don't know if it's worth it versus other things you could be playing, but like any lower than that, and this card just gets increased value. This card was good.
You are correct. This card's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a common thing you do in a Death Shadow deck is there's fetch lands which let you search for another land. It's a land that lets you that you can sacrifice it and search for a land, but you have to pay a life. Right. So you go down to 19 to fetch for your Blood Crypt or whatever, and Blood Crypt is a land that taps for black and red, and it says to play it untapped, you have to pay 2 life. So you pay 1 life to fetch for Blood Crypt. You play Blood Crypt untapped. You're already at 17 life. And then you can play a card called Thoughtseize, which is look at your opponent's hand, take a card from it and put it in the graveyard. Take a non-land card from it and put it in the graveyard, but you take 2 life to play the card.
Right.
So you're already at 15 by the time your turn 1 is over, without even being attacked.
Yeah.
And then if you fetch, if you fetch for another land and shock it in again, that now you're at 12, and then you can play Death Shadow as a 1/1 on turn 2 of the game.
Yeah.
And then the deck also can play like cards like Lightning Bolt and things like that can manipulate your own life total. There's a common thing that if your opponent tries to kill this with like a damage-based removal spell like Lightning Bolt, you can use your own Lightning Bolt and target yourself, and then this will dodge the Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because it's reactive. The stats don't go on the stack, right? They just immediately.
Right.
It is a 5/5. It is a 7/7.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this deck was one of the best decks in the format at one point back before they banned a different card, but we don't talk about that.
Okay, this actually, now I'm thinking about it, reminds me of Light Elemental for Priest, where it's a
exactly. I know what you're talking about,
and it's just instant.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's like a Light Elemental, and that gets huge.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and go on to your red card.
Arclight Phoenix, 3 neutral and a red. It's a creature, and you said the Phoenix doesn't really mean anything. It's a
creature type. If things work with Phoenixes, then it'll work.
Sure. I assumed it was like a type in Yu-Gi-Oh. It doesn't usually matter unless it does matter.
Yeah. I was going to say that.
Yeah. Like half the time you don't care about it, and half the time you really care about it. But it doesn't actually make the card better or worse in a lot of cases.
Yep.
Okay, so this has got flying and haste. Haste means it can attack the turn you play it?
Correct.
Okay. This keyword, like haste, is like my biggest pet peeve in card games, because most card games that have, well, Summoning Sickness have this thing, but they all call it rush, haste, charge, and they all mean sort of the same thing, but like I get them mixed up.
Yep.
Yeah. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you cast 3 or more instant and sorcery spells this turn, I assume that means either or, not
and or.
Both. Yeah. Return this from your graveyard to the battlefield. Oh, okay. So this is an effect that doesn't require it to be on board. This is an effect that only works if it's in your graveyard.
Yep.
I mean, it's a 3/2 for 4 mana. So, this just keeps coming back, and it can attack every time you do it. But you also have to really deplete your hand to play this. Like, after the first time. If it's in the grave. And I'm assuming this triggers for, like, if I have 4 of them in the grave, all 4 of them will come back.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if the game goes long, that feels like it puts a lot of pressure on. I guess it also makes blocking with this sort of free, because you can get it back. But if you're blocking, you're not attacking, so why are you playing red? A question, how easy is it to get card draw? Because if I have to play 3, so like just 3 spells effectively. Oh, this is creatures are not instant or sorcery spells, right?
Correct.
Yeah, then card draw I think really doesn't matter. Like, how easy is it to get card draw? Because if I have to play 3 just to summon this back, is that too expensive?
There's card draw, but it's usually outside of like super broken cards, like Treasure Cruise that says like exile a bunch of cards from your graveyard, draw 3. That card is illegal in Pioneer. Which is a format of Magic. Usually the cards that draw cards are like 1 blue mana, look at the top card of your deck, draw a card, basically.
Okay.
A card like Consider is a card that says 1 blue instant. Look at the top card of your deck. You can put it in the graveyard or keep it on top and draw a card. There's a card there's a card called Opt, which is a 1 mana blue card that says look at the top card of your deck, keep it on top or put it to the bottom of the deck, and then draw a card. And those cards are called cantrips, and those cards are basically just mini draw cards.
Okay. Maybe I'm looking at this wrong way. Yeah, I think I'm evaluating this wrong. How easy is it to send a card from my deck to the graveyard?
From your deck to grave,
If I can just fool. Okay. But like from hand to grave, easier.
Hand to grave, easier, but you have to build around it a little bit more.
Okay, because if you can just dump this in some way, then you don't ever have to pay mana for it. It's just free when you fulfill the condition, right?
Correct.
That might make it better. Well, it definitely makes it better. I just don't know if it's good still. Okay. Oh, before beginning of combat on your turn. So if I start casting spells on my opponent's turn, then I get nothing.
Yes, this will heavily incentivize you to play all of your spells on your own.
Okay. Well, my opponent. Let's say my opponent plays a bunch of creatures, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And then I spend 3 spells removing them in some way, and win the board back. Then I get this back for free, and it's not necessarily like it's not effectively different from playing them in my opponent's turn.
That is true, but you won't have the mana for your opponent's turn, so it's like a catch-22.
Yeah, but I mean, this being in the hypothetical where this is in the grave, I don't want to spend it on my opponent's turn anyway. So
right,
I don't know if that matters. If this is the payoff for my deck, then you obviously would build a deck around this. I just don't know if 3 damage every turn is enough. If you can get multiples, then it probably is enough. But I don't know how easy that is to do. I think if you're playing this from your hand, this is too expensive. Both in terms of maybe 4 mana for 3 damage to face, and also spending 3 spells to get it back. I think it might just happen naturally sometimes, but you're not doing it every turn. Is sometimes good enough. No, I think three cards in a turn is a little too expensive for this to be worth the payoff. I think.
Okay, final answer.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna have to go with.
Okay, this card is good. Yep. 3 cards in a turn is hard, but it's easy at the same time because the deck that wants to be playing this will be playing a whole bunch of very tiny spells. So so even as early as turn 3, you can get multiple Arclight Phoenixes back on the field.
Okay.
And there's also a card that has a lot of context and no way of you knowing what this card does, but it's called Picklock Prankster. It's a creature, but it has like a spell half of it, kind of like a pendulum card.
Okay.
It's 1 and a blue for an instant called Free the Fae. It says mill 4 cards, add an instant or sorcery from among the milled cards to your hand. So you're effectively milling 3 cards and adding and getting a card from this card. This deck will play a lot of self mill and a lot of hand discard. So you will have a lot of ways to get Arclight Phoenix into your graveyard, and then you have a lot of spells to refill your hand, like Treasure Cruise, which is Delve, which is exile cards from the graveyard to help pay for the mana cost. Draw 3 cards. So you will fill up your graveyard really fast, draw 3 cards for 1 blue mana, and then play 2 more spells. And then hopefully you mill over a couple of Arclight Phoenixes or discard them with a card like Ledger Shredder, which says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, draw a card and discard a card. So you have a lot of ways to discard Arclight Phoenix. And I guess the moral of the story is you didn't know there was that many ways to like self-mill yourself or like hand discard, and there are for a deck like this.
Okay, well I think the crux was that I didn't realize you could play spells from the graveyard in Magic. That makes it obviously a lot easier to play 3 spells if they're just in your grave, right?
Well, we're not casting spells from your graveyard. They're all the cards in this deck that you're casting are from your hand, but there's one card called Treasure Cruise that can exile cards from your graveyard to like help cast the spell, basically.
Right, but you're mana cheating by using the graveyard.
Yes.
So effectively, yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. All right.
Yep.
I was sort of on the right path, but I got the wrong conclusion.
Yeah, I thought you were going to get it, and I was going to go for the 5 for 5 with your green card, but it's okay. You can go 4 out of 5. Okay, 80% is really, really good. If you're down in the comments watching this and you think that Angus here can go 4 for 5, let me know if you're a believer or if you are a doubter. Let's go ahead and go on to the last card, a green card, the last card coming up.
My preconceived notion about Magic is that green is basically Druid.
Green is basically Druid.
Yeah, okay. I'm expecting to see something big or some ramp or just something really obnoxious.
This is very big and obnoxious.
Excellent, excellent. The Skullspawn Nexus. Basically 0 mana because you're playing Druid. 6 neutral, 2 green. Legendary artifact. Legendary means you can only have 1 on the battlefield?
You only have one the Skullspawn Nexus in play at a time.
Is that for each player or both players? Like if I play this, can my opponent play one?
Yes.
Man, mirrors would be so fun if that was not how that worked.
It used to be that way. It used to be that way.
There are some. It's in Yu-Gi-Oh! There are some things that are still like that, and it's awful.
I actually have to ask the audience too. If you have a crazy back in the day legendary story, let me know in the comments too. There are crazy legendary things where like you can't play it because your opponent has one, or like neither of you can play one. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. This spell cost X less to cast. Oh, I wasn't wrong. It literally got 0. Where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So if I have a 6/6, then this just costs 2 green.
Correct.
Right. The X in the circle means it only reduces the neutral cost, right? Not the green.
Correct.
Like if I have an 8/8, it doesn't cost 0.
That's not too intuitive, so I'm happy you got that. You're really smart.
I have spoken with some Magic players, and I actually got asked this as a ruling question. I'm like, I don't play Magic.
Oh, okay, got it.
So I did actually. I have Googled this exact interaction of cost reduction.
Okay, there we go. I take it back.
In the past. Yeah, I'm not. No compliments here. We're card game players. Whenever one or more non-token creatures you control dies, create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness, each equal to the total power of those creatures. So if you play like a board wipe, say, and 3 things died, let's say they were all 1s, it would create a 3/3?
Each equal to the total power of those creatures. Yeah, total power.
Yeah, so if 3 1/1s die, it creates a 3/3. But like if you kill each of them individually, it will create 3 1/1s.
Yes.
Okay. Pay 2, tap this. Double target creature's power until the end of the turn. So this costs nothing if I play a big thing. If I play a big thing and have mana left over because this costs nothing, I'm hitting you in the face for, let's say, hypothetically 12, because I'm assuming I've got at least a 6/6 on the board. And if you ever try to interact with my board, it comes back. Like, effectively, if I have a 6/6, it's unkillable until you remove this, because if you kill it, I just get another 6/6.
Correct.
What does die mean in not Hearthstone, sorry, in Magic? Like
anything that puts it in the graveyard.
Okay, so if I Path to Exiled it, I don't get a token. Correct. If anything that puts it in the graveyard, so like game mechanics as well.
Game mechanics, sacrificing it, like everything that will put it in the graveyard is considered dying.
Okay, so maybe this is not even about.
Well, unless it goes from hand or deck to graveyard, then it's not dying. Anything that goes from the field to the graveyard is dying.
Field to grave. So if it doesn't matter how big well, it does because it cost reduction. But if I basically have an infinite creature. So if I have something that wants to like sacrifice a creature, I can sacrifice it, gain whatever benefit, get another 6/6, and do that infinitely.
No, because your 6/6 will be a token now. It says non-token creature.
Non-token creatures. Okay. They actually had some foresight.
They actually had some foresight. That's funny.
Well,
sometimes I don't. Let's be honest.
To knock the magic, devs or whatever, but yeah, having played card games for a long time, this is the sort of interaction that usually gets overlooked.
Yeah, in fact, it doesn't go infinite with itself.
Yeah. Okay. So, you said that I was right in saying this is Druid, so I'm assuming there's a lot of buff spells, sort of. Maybe even AoE buffs.
That is a theme of green. Is they do have some buff spells, protection spells, cards that give trample, huge creatures, huge payoff cards like this one. It does a lot of big stuff.
Okay. And I suppose on the last card, it's not that. It's probably a bit late to be asking this, but how relevant is it for decks to be like one color? Like, is that usual, or is that just a choice people make, or is that unusual? Because this 6 can be paid with any color of mana, right? It doesn't have to be green.
Yeah, this can be played in multicolored decks. There are quite a few monocolored decks. I would say the majority isn't monocolored, but there are a few monocolored.
Okay. I'm assuming whatever you want to be playing is probably green, but maybe not. Like if I just played this with the black card you showed me, then this is nuts.
With Death Shadow?
Yeah.
Oh, like sacrifice it, make
Like,
it 13-13?
I could play this on like turn 3, assuming I can get 2 green.
That is true.
I don't think slow comes into this because it's ramp.
There are lands.
I've got to assume. Sorry, I'm just gonna say I've got to assume that Magic Ramp is pretty good at this point because the game's been out for 30 years. Like,
the green is the ramp color.
There's got to be good ramp. Yeah. If I'm not playing this on like turn 4 or 5, then something's wrong. I guess the question is how easy is it to remove an artifact? I can do the tap the same turn I play it, right?
Correct. Artifacts you can use to tap abilities the turn you play them. Creatures you cannot tap the turn you play them.
Okay.
This is like a continuous spell, by the way. I'm sure you got that, but
yeah.
Like a continuous.
Yes, yeah. And explain to me how like the stack works in Magic. Like, let's say I play this, and that's fine, and no one does anything, and then I pay the 2 and tap it, and like my opponent removes it. Like,
removes the creature in response?
Get the effect? No, well, I assume if it removes the creature, then it doesn't matter because double nothing is nothing, right? Like it gives a buff to the creature, right? And if the creature's not there, it doesn't.
Right. The buff would fizzle, but you would get the fungus dinosaur token.
Oh yeah.
But are you saying if they remove the Nexus in response?
Yeah,
you would still get
Nexus, does the creature still get?
It still gets buffed.
Okay, so this is a lot better than like a continuous spell in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
But if they had removal for this, why wouldn't they just do it on like before I do the tap, right? Because you
have priority.
Oh, okay. All right, we're going back to 2003 Yu-Gi-Oh. If
yes.
I have priority...
Yes, there's no open game state in Magic.
Right, okay. That does change things. So I can play this and tap before my opponent can respond.
Correct.
That's kind of a question I want to ask, but I think it's a bit cheating. I'll ask it anyway, and you can tell me to sod off.
Yeah.
Druid had sort of 2 ways of winning, and one of them was going tall and one of them was going wide. Like, this card obviously benefits going tall. You want a big thing and you want to double that big thing rather than you've got like a bunch of 3/3s and you make one of them a 6/6.
Right.
How is that how green wants to play, or do they want to go wide and like
it can play both ways?
It can play.
Like,
okay, there are
like if you want to build a green,
good
green decks have been good but going wide, and green decks also have been good going tall.
Okay. If there's a minion you can play that's at least a 6/6. Oh well, it's just power. It just needs to have 6 stack. It could be a 6/1 in a lot of cases. Then this card is nuts. If there is nothing you want to play for that, then maybe this becomes worse. I guess another question is how much mana would I want to pay for this? Probably 4, maybe? And having a 2 power creature is not hard at all. This card's good. If I can make a big thing... Oh, you can block it, though. You get to choose if it hits you in the face. Unless it's got flying. Or I can do some stuff to your board.
Green doesn't usually have a lot of flyers, but green has a lot of trample. Like, how do I explain that? I'll explain trample to you, piercing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I remember the trample keyword. It's kind of like I describe it as like overflow damage, where like any extra gets hit in the face.
Like nowadays, almost every big green creature has trample. Like they don't really print huge green creatures that don't have trample anymore.
In which case, then making it as big as possible is just beneficial. Like, unless they've got like a Path of Exile, if they've got a Lightning Bolt, then I don't care.
Right.
Because good luck killing like a 16/16.
God, yeah. Usually red decks will have a hard time with like huge green decks for sure, just in general.
Yeah. Okay. It mana cheats itself. This has got to be good, right? Like, just not paying for things is always the best thing you can do in a card game. I think final answer. This card is playable. Maybe it's not good. Maybe there's not a deck it fits in, but like this.
You gotta choose one. These cards are good or bad.
Oh, okay, it's good. It's good. It's seen play in something at some point.
This card is bad.
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
This card is very bad. It's playable in like one format, and that's Commander, which is like arguably the most popular format, but it's the 4-player format. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah, I've seen people play.
Yeah, this card is good like in your big green deck in Commander, because a lot of like if your opponent just wraths the board, you get like a huge token. There's like a lot more wraths in the game, but this card is like there is like a 3-mana like 6/6, like 3-mana 7/7 like that in Standard right now.
Right.
This card's still not played in that deck because the problem with the decks that want to play this card is that if your opponent removes the card, like if your opponent removes your huge card before you can cast this card just rots in your hand forever. And usually, and usually the cards that are humongous that you want to be casting have no like protection, no like hexproof reward or anything like that. So if your opponent just casts one Doomblade or Go for the Throat, which is just a generic black removal spell, you will just have the Skullspore Nexus in your hand the entire game, and then eventually have to like cast it on 8 mana, and then it's like really bad. It's basically the definition of a win more card. Whereas it is good when you already are winning, and it's really bad when you're not winning.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense.
So that's the verdict on the Skullspore Nexus. There was a card like this that was pretty good called the Great Henge, which I think is what they kind of based this off of, because this came out a couple years after the Great Henge came out. The Great Henge is basically the same thing as this, where it's cost less based on the power of the creatures that you have. But it also says whenever a creature enters battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. So then you can even if it does rot in your hand, you will eventually like keep drawing cards as many creatures as you have. So since this card doesn't give you like direct card advantage, it will give you like indirect in the form of like making a fungus. This card isn't even good, even if you have to hard cast it for 8.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's the thing. I kind of forgot that your opponent could just remove your stuff before you could.
Yeah. I mean, you were naming Path to Exile.
Logic.
You're naming Path to Exile, but you were basically always assuming that your creature would stay alive after you played your huge creature.
Yes. Yeah. I forget how much interaction there just is in Magic.
Oh yeah, there's tons
on each player's turn.
Yeah,
like Yu-Gi-Oh's got loads of interaction, but none of it's usually remove a creature in your opponent's turn.
Right.
That's very premium.
So, all right.
Yeah,
well, doubters rejoice. You didn't go for the 4 for 1, but 3 and 2 is still really good. You started out really strong, and then the last 2 cards were really. I made sure to make this like pretty hard. Like this is a very hard one. I gave you a lot of really interesting cards like Arclight Phoenix, Death Shadow, like Skullspore Nexus. Really interesting cards. Thank you once again for coming on the show. Appreciate your time, Angus. Also, if you'd like to be on the show as well, make sure to check out the Patreon link down in the description below, where you also can be on the show. Also, I want to put it right over here, but make sure to go to prodigygames.com and use code JAMES7 at checkout to get 7% off of literally anything in the store, Magic cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, etc. All the links are down in the description below. Thank you once again, Angus, and I'll see you again next time. And as always, peace.
Thank you. See you. Bye.